In the summer, my closest cousin came to visit me from Germany. Before he went to study in Europe, we were not only relatives but also best friends and spent a lot of time together. We both loved watching horror movies at night and telling each other scary stories. That night we talked a lot about different topics. He told me a lot about Germany and gave me some souvenirs. He also recalled stories about his school and told me that life was completely different there. I have never been outside of my country, although I have always wanted to travel to Germany even for a short time. My cousin showed me many photos from his new camera that he took in Germany. He showed me European landmarks, special places, and Catholic churches, which were very different from the Orthodox Christian churches of my religion. Then he showed me a photo of his new German girlfriend, who I admit was very nice looking and made me jealous with my cousin's kind envy, as I had only one girlfriend in my life, and she left me soon after. In short, we spent the whole day so cheerfully. We talked a lot, reminisced a lot, and finally it was time to revisit the past and watch a horror movie. My cousin told me that he knew a good movie about a cursed nun that everyone said was very scary. I agreed, even though I thought all the new horror movies were crap and not scary at all. We took popcorn out of the microwave oven, covered our legs with thin blankets, and started watching the movie. I admit, this movie far exceeded my expectations. It's really one of the best movies in its genre, and it really scared me a few times. It was an interesting feeling because I haven't been so scared by a movie in years. When the movie was over, my cousin told me to follow him to the restroom and wait by the door because he was afraid to go out alone. I made fun of him, but in the end, I went and stood by the bathroom door. I really didn't like hearing the noises coming from the toilet while my cousin was inside, so I decided to call him and jokingly tell him to do his work more quietly. But suddenly I heard footsteps coming from the first-floor corridor of our house. It was as if someone was walking back and forth, and the footsteps sounded like someone was wearing slippers. I remember my grandfather making a similar gait when he used to walk in his old slippers, although he died 2 years ago. And I knew for sure that no one else was in this house except us. I quietly shouted to my cousin to get out as quickly as possible because something very strange was happening to us. At first he thought I was joking and trying to scare him, but later, when he came out of the bathroom after washing his hands, he heard the footsteps coming from the first-floor corridor. He asked me if there was anyone in the house with us, and when I replied that there was no one else living here but me, his face became pale and his eyes widened with fear. The footsteps continued, and whoever was downstairs kept walking back and forth. "Okay, now we will both go together and look from the top of the stairs to see who is walking in our house," he said and shook my hand. I didn't think it was a very good idea because if there was a thief downstairs, he might attack us, and if he had a firearm with him, we weren't in for a good day. However, I couldn't see any other way out, so I agreed with him and we slowly walked towards the railing of the stairs. As we got closer to the staircase, the sound of slippers coming from the first-floor corridor on the cold floor grew louder and louder until we finally approached our destination and looked away. At that moment, our blood froze in our veins and our whole body was filled with fear, not because we saw any kind of monster or creature, but because there was no one there, and as soon as we looked from the second floor, the sound of footsteps immediately stopped. My cousin and I stood stunned and could not make a sound. We tried to explain this event in our thoughts, but we could not find the answers. We barely slept that night, and nothing like it has happened since. In the end, we blamed it all on watching a horror movie late at night and agreed that the sound just seemed to us. A few days later, my cousin left for Germany again, and I was left alone in this 2-story house where I had felt very safe until then. But now I thought that there was someone or something living in the house besides me, which could be the spirit of my dead grandfather. This unsolvable story happened to my roommate. We live in the small town of Linwood, Washington, and often at night the streets are empty and dark. Although criminal cases are not very common in our settlement, walking alone at night still leaves a bad feeling in our hearts. My roommate named David was coming home from the gym at 10 o'clock at night. When he got off his last bus, he had to walk 20 minutes to get home because there was no bus stop near our house. The night was dark and silent. A car passed by only once every 5 minutes, and pedestrians were nowhere to be seen. David took his earbuds out of his bag, put them in his ears, and put on a playlist of his favorite songs on his phone to make the long drive less boring. David looked behind him every few minutes because he had the feeling that someone was watching him from behind. But when he looked back and saw nothing but a dark street, he just kept on walking, humming quietly to the song he was hearing through his earbuds. Once he quickly crossed the carriageway, followed the pedestrian path, and the further he went, the more dark the street became. When he reached a small rise, he looked behind him once more to make sure that no one was really watching him from behind, and then continued on as usual, this time dancing his hands to the music. When he reached the middle of the ascent and was moving higher, he noticed a shadow under his feet. At first he thought the shadow belonged to him, but he soon realized that his shadow was slightly to the left, and what he was seeing at that moment looked completely different. He was very scared for a second, so he turned his face to shoulder level and saw a man slightly taller than him. Although he couldn't make out his face well, even that was enough to make him think that the stranger really didn't look normal. He had a long and black beard and his eyes were red, as if he hadn't slept in 35 straight hours, and spent the entire time sitting in front of a computer screen. His lips were pulled to the side, because of which his teeth were visible. He also had a hood over his head, making it harder to see the details of his face. My roommate was scared. He thought it was some homeless lunatic who was going to attack, and he couldn't figure out how he got here so suddenly, when not more than a minute ago he took a good look around and made sure that there really was no one there but him. It was simply impossible for someone to come so close to him in a few seconds that the distance between them was only 1 meter. David looked ahead, just keeping his eyes on the track in front of him and tensing his body to prepare for the impending attack. About 15 seconds passed without him looking back, and he just continued on his way tensely. But then when he decided to take another look at the stranger who was walking so close behind him, the boy became even more scared. There was complete emptiness behind him. Neither an unknown man nor anything spiritual could be seen there. It was the strangest thing David had ever experienced. He immediately turned back with his whole body and carefully checked the environment. There was really no one there and no one's shadow was visible. He could not even think that the unknown man had turned somewhere on another track and continued his way in a different direction, since there was no other track joining this not-so-great ascent, and there were no lanes around. David thought it was all just waiting and decided to just continue on his way. But as he turned in the direction he was supposed to go home, his heart beat very fast, because he saw a stranger standing about 10 paces ahead, with a long beard, strange eyes, and jagged teeth, who he was staring at him and smiling strangely. David looked at the stranger, who was just standing there and didn't make a sound for a few seconds. He didn't even seem to be breathing, he just stood there like a monument and didn't take his eyes off the boy. Then David, who was getting more and more afraid as time went by, decided to show his courage and called out to the stranger in a slightly harsh voice, "Hey you, what do you want?" After David's words, the man turned around in a split second and ran away without looking back, without his face changing at all. His sudden sharp movement scared David even more, and he took a few steps back, but the stranger ran in a completely different direction and very soon covered his eyes. After that, David continued walking faster and didn't put any music in his earpods anymore. The situation was very scary for him, and if anyone else tried to approach him, he would have heard about it better without the music. The creepy-looking stranger has not been seen since. After escaping, it disappeared as if swallowed by the ground or simply evaporated. When David came home, he told me all this, which scared me very much because I often had to walk on that road at night, and every time I approached that hill, I had the feeling that someone was following me. Your subscriptions and video likes give me the greatest motivation to continue making this content on YouTube. If you like the video and subscribe to the channel, it will develop my channel, which means that in the future we will offer you more stories with better quality. May the grace of Piranha protect you.